Heads up, there are no planned fire alarms until today, so if the alarm goes off, then we will need to make sure to exit the building as swiftly as possible, and staff will be on hand to guide you to the best possible. We have received some questions from members of the public, and in line with the public partition protocol, written answers will be provided within 10 clear working days of the meeting and published on the TDCA website. Okay, apologies for absence. Elaine?
We have apologies from Alan Armstrong and Lindsay Hawk.
Thank you. And next to receive any declarations of interest, I'll kick off that I, as on behalf of STDC, sit on the Teesside Freeport Board.
Sit on the South East Site Company Board.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of January. Has anybody got any comments, observations on those minutes? Can I take it that you approve those as a correct record of the meeting?
Yeah, they're good minutes.
Thank you. I actually don't have an update for myself, so I'm going to go straight to John to provide.
Yeah, I think before we get into my Chief Exec's report, and before we begin really, I just wanted to offer some brief commentary regarding an alleged £100 million transfer of transport funding to South Seas Development Corporation. So if we can minute this, Elaine, and record it as a matter for the minutes, please. So I really wanted to be clear that no such transfer has taken place. What's been referenced in public is programme level transport funding held by Tees Valley Combined Authority. It's not been allocated or transferred to STDC, and no funding has been released to any delivery body.
Does that mean it won't? Sorry.
Yeah.
I do, however, want to acknowledge one point, that the way this was described in our recent finance papers could have been clearer. I recognise that this allows some of the confusion to take hold, and we can ensure greater clarity in future reporting. It's important to separate that, though, from some of the more serious assertions that have been made. Claims that STDC is insolvent or that funding has been diverted without proper process or accountability are simply not true. All transport funding decisions sit with TDCA and are subject to established governance, assurance and business case approval, and that process has not been bypassed. STDC remains financially sound. Our budget and medium-term financial plan, which is an important part of this agenda, are prudent and do not rely on the receipt of any transport funding. There are no decisions for this board on this particular matter, but given the level of public commentary, I felt it important to address directly and put the facts on record.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you for that, John. Can we, I know there was an unregulated question flying across the room there, can we just confirm that it is ring fence for transport projects to be delivered by the TDCA? I mean, the one that springs to mind where I'm getting the most grief for is the South Bank train station, for instance. Would it be worth maybe saying to the board members a dissection of what's been agreed at TDCA in terms of the ring fence projects already?
Yeah, we can do that. You know, I think just to reiterate, those transport individual schemes will be delivered by TDCA. They are the accountable body. Who they then choose to deliver those is down to TDCA.
Well, that would go back to the Transport Committee and the TDCA to agree the delivery partner, I'm assuming?
I'm not with it.
Yeah, you would have, without knowing the ins and outs of that particular programme, that would have be a question for TDCA.
If, for instance, the South Bank train station's already been agreed with Network Rail, isn't it? And it's the, I think it's the sleepers that are something to do with that, that's delayed delivery, or that would have already been delivered and be not looking as if it was 100 million part of that.
Yeah, I think if you're asking me whether it's going to go back to TDCA Transport, that would have to be a question for TDCA Transport team and TDCA Transport Committee.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the optics of it, because it has historically been agreed and so I'm assuming that wouldn't need to go back to the TVCA Transport Committee.
I don't know about Transport Committee, to be perfectly honest. You would have to double check that with their team. However, the transport programme was taken to TVCA Cabinet. I think it was last Friday. So if we needed to, or if either members of the public need to, they can always revisit the TVCA Cabinet papers.
Yeah, I think my broad point is that this 100 million's already been agreed in terms of delivering certain projects for infrastructure transport. It might be more prudent for maybe the board or TVCA to issue that list of projects that have already been agreed.
Yeah, you're right actually. If you think about that, it's not for STDC to define that. That
I
is
appreciate
TVCA
that. I think
programme.
maybe we could write to them and request that.
I think it is all in the last TVCA cabinet.
It is,
paper.
yeah, I know it is, but you're scrolling through, isn't it? I'm just thinking it may be easier to stop Tristan Leroy to this well making a video saying that we're just getting 100 million when it's already been agreed.
We can certainly get, ask TVCA if they can. I mean, as their cabinet papers are on their website.
Yeah, I appreciate that, but most people listening to social media clips are not trawling through 500 pages of a report, are they?
What I can do, Councillor Brown, I'll work with the information governance team for TVCA and see if it's something that we can publish. But I'll take that away.
At TVCA level.
At TVCA
What I don't want to do is
sorry.
cross into TVCA governance. What we're saying here, just to be absolutely clear, STDC have not been given £100 million worth of funding. That fund will be controlled by TVCA as the accountable body, and whatever approval processes, governance arrangements they have to go through will be held at TVCA. You know, and if there's anything for STDC to consider, let's say future grant funding agreements, because that's where we would come in. If TVCA wanted us to deliver one of those schemes, whether it be train station or whether it be A66, they could come to STDC or anybody else. They'd all be governed by a grant funding agreement. If we were in receipt of a grant funding agreement, I think that would come back to the board as a board decision.
But I think it'd probably be prudent that the board does address the fact that none of this will be procured for private investment. It's all to deliver public funded transfer projects is already agreed, and that's the bit we need to really nail down.
Yeah, but that would be a TVCA matter to reconfirm it.
I appreciate that, but it is the STDC all over the press though, isn't it?
It
The
is,
local press.
That's why
It's our reputation we're talking about here, not the TVCA.
absolutely, but that's why I made that statement clear, is that we are not in receipt of 100 million. We never will be in receipt of 100 million. Okay.
Yep.
And again, apologies, I know where the confusion has arisen from, because there is a narrative and a paragraph in our finance papers which kind of added to some of that confusion, and we can improve that as we go forward.
Okay.
Can I come in please, Chair, if that's okay, just for section 73 officer, I just want to be really clear about the finance paper. So at the time of writing, so the budget as proposed does not include any elements of the 100 million. The 100 million that's referenced in the finance paper relates to potential capital projects that may be funded from an allocation. That, as John has said, is an account body by TVCA. So the budget does not include any elements of that. It's not based or set on that basis. And the point of including was that the reference at the time of writing that report, there were indications that a change control had been approved by DFT for certain projects that would fall potentially within STDC's remit for themselves to oversee. So now we know there's been a bit further clarification on that. We'll make sure that's clear going forward. I just want to be sure this is capital expenditure. It's not to do with setting the revenue budget or the capital budget. There is no inclusion in the budget in relation to this 100 million. And the reference in there was to ensure that if very soon a matter goes before Cabinet referring to transport grant, potentially, that the budgets that were being set and board being asked for didn't include those in any way. So it's a bit of a point of clarity in advance because of the narrative of that and because we understood that a change control had been approved by DFT. That's now proved to be incorrect. We're obviously happy to make the correction, but that was what the knowledge based at the time by that report.
Lynn?
Okay, thank you, John. Let's move on. Tory of governance and appointments.
Oh, sorry, is it a CX report?
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant. Sorry, have you got a CX? Sorry. You've got some more.
Yeah, no, sorry, Chair. I just want to draw out a few key points on the report. I think for everybody's benefit, and you will see that this quarter has been heavily focused on setting a balanced budget and a robust medium-term financial plan with strong early engagement, helping to challenge some of those assumptions and ensure that the board fully understand those items that underpin that budget setting process across the organisation within the various entities that we control. We're also seeing, I think, a clear shift from capital delivery into a more operationally, commercially focused phase, with infrastructure now largely in place, and increasing the emphasis on revenue generation and cost recovery. Across the site, tenant activity remains positive, particularly in offshore wind and net zero sectors, with good progress on key schemes and continued interest in the remaining plots. Finally, the establishment of TEMCO and the maturity of the management company and progress on utility agreements really mark an important step towards a more mature and sustainable operating model. I'm happy really to take the paper as read and take any questions that there are from the board.
Couple if you don't mind, John. Just over the next 3 years, how many of the forecasts are based on signed agreements, contractually agreed or in negotiation other than assumptions? And do you think or foresee any remaining risks that could need more public funding intervention over the next couple of years?
Okay, so 2 questions there, I think. Just remind, just run through the first one for me.
The first one, just how many have we got under contract over the next 3 years rather than just being forecast or assumed?
Is this in relation to income?
Yes. Do you want me to go wait till the budget or?
Yeah, I think we cover most of the income risks in the budget setting section. But what I would say is that our financial planning is underpinned by a mix of contracted income and prudent assumptions, which is typical of a programme of the size and scale of what we're at now. So obviously the contract elements are known, given, no problem. Some of that assumed income, we will attach further prudency to that. So what do I mean by that? Well, business rates is one. So we can talk you through, and again, this is part of the budget setting session, how we have mitigated anything that is unknown. What was the second question?
If there was any remaining risks that you think that might come to light that might need public intervention in terms of more borrowing from the TVCA or?
I think how would I answer that? I think in terms of the risks, those risks again probably are linked to that.
I'm talking specifically around SEA and some of the press. I know we've had conversations where you give me peace of mind, but I'm just thinking there's some of the narrative out there, the uncertainty over the SEA situation and things.
I think, to be honest, for the board's benefit, those key risks, and these are no surprise, but the key risks are tenant activity and operation, the date at which things are delivered, you know, SEA coming on stream, NZT coming on stream, they're the risks that we have to monitor and keep at the forefront of our mind as part of our regular forecasting and our regular review. You know, they are the elements that we need to be aware of, and you know, I suppose linked to that are market conditions on offshore wind and energy. If those market conditions change, because we've got some pretty significant tenants that are linked into those sectors, we need to be mindful of any shift in that sector that could impact upon some of our assumptions as we go forward.
Okay. I think there was answer somewhere there. But can we just give her assurances? I know we've had private conversations, so without breaking our confidence about the security of SEA and around their contracts and their same businesses now.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for us to comment on an individual business or entity that's got their own priorities. You know, I think some of the
I mean, I labour the point, John, because obviously it has a knock-on effect to the liabilities to the public purse, doesn't it?
Well, I think our priority is STDC, if you look at SEA or any other tenant, is, again, what's the risk? Well, it's the recovery of revenue. That revenue being the recovery of business rates.
Yeah.
So I don't think as a board we should confuse somebody's P&L and their order book with their business rate liability.
Yeah, okay. But the business rates is paid, the business is paid, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's not for me to comment on anyone's business, in that matter. It would be, there are some conjectured opinion out there as to some of the operational challenges CM may or may not have, but that's not for me or anyone else at the board, I don't think, to comment on an individual tenant on the site.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, John. Para 11, under the Foundry, you mentioned the AI data centre, and Reserve Matters was approved last August by the Council. Now, potentially this is massive for us. Is there anything more to say since August last year then on that? I assume not, because it would have been in the report.
Yes, exactly that really. I think
Yeah,
commercial negotiations linked to a number of sectors continuing. Those commercial negotiations are subject to confidentiality agreements for all the obvious reasons. So as soon as we can deliver some confidence and comfort to the board, we will do in that respect. But there is a huge amount of interest across the site in various sectors. I don't want to be pinned down to a particular sector, but there are some interesting matters that I can see being progressed.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you. There's a couple of mentions of funding approval, one on number 5 for the Freeport entrance zone, and on number 7 for the T-stop roundabout HGV Park. Can you give us any more information on the funding? Is that STDC? Applying for that approval, and where's it coming from?
Yeah, so that goes back to the original transportation grants that we started to talk through. So again, I don't want to confuse matters or conflate them, but they are individual transport packages that would be delivered under the Highways and Transportation grant that devolved to TBCA. So they may choose us as a delivery partner to deliver those works. That will go back to the conversation that we had at the start, really, in terms of the grant funding.
Just on that, John, the roundabout, is that likely to cause any more, again, I don't want to re-spark it, but will that cause any more disruption with the judgment that was made with PD Ports?
No, there are no plans in terms of any of the development plans that will go across any third-party land, anything that was previously part of the judgment.
That's correct. That judgment stands, and any work that we undertake, may or may not undertake, will have to be considerate of that judgment.
Isn't there a 1 metre or a certain number of feet of that certain site that isn't on our land and is on their land? Or?
That's it. If this grant programme comes in, when they do look at the configuration of that roundabout, they will have to design that with in mind, having the judgment.
And the reason why I ask is that likely to kick off any more repeals and legal costs to the STDC in terms of...
It shouldn't, because if the reconfiguration is done, or the configuration of the proposed roundabout is done with in mind the dimensions provided for in the judgment, it shouldn't cause any issue.
It's a different roundabout, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think we've got 2 years. We might have
The
two.
PD Ports.
So we're talking about South Bank.
It's a different
So
roundabout.
the original roundabout is not part of the 100 billion highway delivery.
No, that would be
Because I know the council got involved, so that's not
Yeah. So
that's all I really wanted to
that
know.
roundabout that we've
Right,
got there.
different roundabouts,
Yeah.
okay.
Like the magic roundabout.
Yeah,
It's not any of that.
I think magic
Only
roundabout.
joking, present public.
There are a lot of roundabouts, to be fair.
Any more questions, John?
It's more to a point really that I know has been in the mind of the management team for a long time. But these bridge repairs, when does this start? Because it is a subject that's been in place for quite a long time.
I And the simple answer to that, John, is they are already ongoing. So we have a risk assessment basis, managed, regularly reviewed, maintaining our assets across the site, not only bridges, but roads, footways, street lights. It's all part of STDL's requirements and maintaining the estate. So there are a number of interventions that we are already discharged, interventions that we're already on with, and then future interventions that we'll plan in line with, you know, the requirements of the regular risk assessment.
I asked the question because, as you know, it was a key part of what you inherited, really, in terms of work to be done.
But to give the board comfort, they're regularly monitored, regularly reviewed. We've got external transportation and structural consultants that review them on a fixed basis.
Thank you.
Anything else, John?
No.
No? Okay, can we note the contents of John's report? Now I'll come to you, Victoria.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the governance appointments paper was to bring forward to board the updated terms of reference, and board is asked to note the amendments and confirm that they are happy with the amendments. The purpose of the terms of reference really is to outline the strategic objectives of the board, the role of the board, and just the responsibilities of the board. What I will say is that the intention is that we will, in the next few months, probably ideally before the next meeting in May or June, to bring to board an updated constitution as well. So we will hopefully, what we intend to do is have these terms of reference will align with any amendments in the constitution as well. But that's a bit of a wider ongoing piece.
Okay.
So happy to take any questions on the terms of reference.
Just one for me.
Yeah.
Is there a fixed tenure for board members being included in there?
Good question, John. I think we got, maybe it's in our, is that in our constitution? I'll take that away.
Just if we're checking, I think, Chair, really.
2 years.
Yeah, we can put that in. I think it's normally a
I just think
2-year
it needs
period.
to be
I think it's a 3-year.
I think it's 3 years. but
That's
I'm not
fine.
sure.
No,
If you can clarify.
absolutely, no problem, Chair. We can
Yeah.
include that in recirculate.
Just on these change of references, financial decisions particularly, and any fund reallocations, bearing in mind the optics of what we were speaking at the beginning of the meeting, could these terms of reference, these don't make it possible for these reallocations to be made outside of the board by approval of officers or delegated powers to them?
There's nothing in the terms of reference in relation to delegated officer powers. The scheme of delegations is found in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So there's nothing in relation to officer delegations in these terms of reference.
Okay. What's so just?
I was going to, Alec, I think what you're referencing there is that was prior to the change of implementation of John, then some of the decisions on allocations were taken outside of
Yes,
the
they were.
yeah. I think there was chunks of capital that were taken outside of the decision and what now, John, since you've been implemented, we've never had anything come over. It hasn't been agreed by board, I think is what Alec referencing there, in terms of the delegated authority of officers.
Okay.
Okay, and that ongoing constitutional where you talked about, will go as business as normal, as Jason's just referred to, where everything comes through the board?
It will go as business as normal up until the point where we will bring the updated constitution back to board in, I'm hoping May, June, is what I'm aiming for.
Right, okay. Thank you. Just one more, do these terms of reference strengthen the governance then? What do you think?
That's obviously your up to your opinion.
I'm the layman, you're the expert, you tell me, Victoria.
Well, it's not an all, in terms of what you mean by governance. Does it outline your board's responsibility, the board's role? Yes, hopefully it does. Are you asking me about the scheme of delegation and the governance around that?
You'll answer that once the
It doesn't reference the,
okay.
the delegation.
Okay. So can we note those terms of reference?
Thank you, Chair.
Next. Okay, let's move on to the weighted pieces in this, the Q3 forecast of revenue and capital outturn. I think, Joe, you're going to introduce this, is that correct?
Just to make a very, very brief overview my name's on all of these reports, but both Becky and Sarah have worked on the detail of these reports, so I'll hand over to them for any detailed questions. With the Q3, I guess from the report, I take the reports read, and obviously we've had the budget workshops and we've been through a lot of the matters raised in there. The key thing to draw out is, well, I think first of all, it's a revenue deficit of 1.733. Rather than the just over 4, just under 500 that was approved in the budget, and both Becky and Sarah will talk you through the reason for that just over 2 million movement, negative movement. But I think the main thing to draw out from the report is we're formally requesting the change of treatment for the contributions into the subsidiaries, so they are now treated as shareholder equity contributions, which is in line with external advice that we have now been given or commissioned, and we've now the outcome that we've been given and is now incorporated into this. And the same treatment is in the budget setting as well when we come to that report. But that's the main thing I think to draw out from Q3, but obviously hand over to my colleagues in the room for more detailed questions.
Did you want to add anything before through?
I'm quite happy to move to questions, or I can take you through the things that you prefer.
Let's go to questions to see where we go. Brian, I think we're looking at Alex.
Just how much is it contractually agreed in the forecast rather than over what's what was the question about last night that made perfect sense to me versus modelled, or honestly 10 o'clock dark at night. Yeah, what is the cumulative direct surplus position over the life of the MTFP, and which year does the model move to be in a stay positive?
Shall we look at that when we get to the budget report?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, all these are budget questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so on Q3, if anybody has any questions, can we note, but can we specifically, as Joe said, approve the revised treatment for the subsidiary funding as shareholder equity to the capital forecast? Are you happy to approve that? Yep. Okay. Thank you. Let's then move on to agenda item 8, the capital and revenue budgets and the updated medium term. Again, Joe, are you introducing and then handing over?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've had the budget workshops, we've been through the numbers in quite a lot of detail, haven't we, in the MTFP, the forecast, so I wasn't proposing to do much of a way of intro. I don't think I'm looking at Becky and Sarah, I don't think much has changed from those budget workshops, it's just more sort of tweaking at the edges. So I think I'm quite happy to move straight to questions, if everyone's happy with that.
Questions for?
Do you want to do that MFTP one now? Please, if you don't mind.
So I think the question was how many years are we in deficit for in the MTFP, and it's all set out in table 1, but just to answer your question directly, we're operating in a deficit position for next year and the following 2 years, and then after that we're in a significant surplus position for 29-30 and 2030-31.
And how many of them? Yeah, my question, I remember the rationale behind this was how much of that's contractually agreed over what's just assumed in forecast.
Okay, so you're talking income.
Yeah.
So if we start with the business rates, we're in exactly the same position as you are when you've got your billing authority hat on. All of the hereditaments, as they call them in business rates, are there or being built. We're not making any assumptions over and above that for any further inward investors coming in.
I think, can I just jump back and just reinforce that point? I think it's a really important point actually in terms of the prudency of the budget and the MTFP. You know, in maybe a private sector world, you would look at your next coming 3 to 5 years, and you make some assumptions that your business might change and will mature, and you attract new income, new tenants. We've not done any of that. We've taken the sites and the tenants as they are today, with no uplift, with nobody else coming on stream, with everything as a static state. That's incorrect, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And with the business rates, as you'll probably know, but just for the benefit of the rest of the board, We have been having joint meetings with the Billing Authority and with external advisors to help us establish what rateable values are going to be there when the valuation office makes their final valuation, and we're still waiting, I think it's fair to say. It was, the latest due date was tomorrow. But
How long have we been waiting for that, John? We've been waiting a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
And every item, I think, every gender, isn't it?
We don't hold our breath for the valuation office.
Okay. And do we have, one last one, do we have any doomsday, I don't want to use the negative terminology, but doomsday forecasting in terms of, without mentioning said tenants, if there is a downturn and you know, somebody that's already in these forecasts have a downturn and, you know, maybe not, hopefully not, but
Yeah.
yeah, do we forecast if that happens?
Well,
Do you want to review, or sorry, do you want to articulate what we do in terms of the mitigation and the contingency levels?
Yeah.
I think it's probably the question.
Yeah.
What contingency do we
What
have?
happens if?
Yeah.
So we've set a contingency against the business rates income coming in, and that's the first year we've done that in STDC. So that's our own judgment, which helps as a buffer. And it's obviously a judgment for STDC to take. It's there, it's sitting there in the table for you to see.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Chair, thank you. John, you mentioned right
Sorry,
at the
Chair,
beginning.
could I come in? Apologies, I'm on the screen. Actually, with my hand up.
Sorry, yeah, carry on.
Is that okay if I come in?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add to what Becky's saying and to Alex's question. In terms of the business rates, there will be a business rates valuation that is issued that the tenants are then duty bound to pay. And therefore, if it's a question of, I think your question was around downturn and not affordable, that then becomes a collectible matter. So in terms of the estimates in the NTFP, those estimates are prudent and are based on external advice. So the income that we're bringing in there is, as I say, as robust as we can get them at this stage. What you're then referring to is their ability to pay those business rates. That becomes a different matter and one more for the billing authority in terms of the operation of the business rates and the collection fund.
It may also.
I just think it's an important point of clarification.
It might also help that because of the nature of the businesses and the nature of the site, the significant proportion, the majority of the business rates payable are covered by reliefs, which means that both the billing authority gets a Section 31 grant automatically. It's not to be payable directly by the business gets a nil or much reduced bill. So that does really help as well.
Is that a one-off thing, or is that a...
That'll be each year for a period of time that the business rates reliefs have been given by HM government. I'm not as close to that, Phil will know.
So one last thing before Caroline comes in, because what Joe said just sort of clouded my mind a little bit. So how do we come up or model the number in the table for the doomsday planning? Sorry, I just think that's more of a soundbite we could do.
So the contingency in there, it's just a contingency against the amount, the actual rating.
Yeah, is there a formula, Joe? Is there a mass times velocity squared or something?
I don't think she heard you there.
Is there a formula how you come up with that number, Joe?
So it's just 10%. It's just
10%.
straight 10%.
Right, okay.
It's a contingency.
I think there's a reasonable approach though, Chair, just in the fact that, you know, you're basing your income based on incumbents and current, you know, whether it's ongoing build, rather than net zero, etc. But as you said to your Chief Executive, well, there's other investors looking to invest, but none of them possible assumptions are built in, so I think that is a prudent approach.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely.
a steady state, isn't it, with the current operators or people who are investing now. It gives us that return, therefore, in 5 years' time, you know, as we've already said, planning being agreed for X, Y, and Z, then therefore, based on that, it is a very good, a prudent budget. You know, if nothing happens in the future, then you know, we're still in a good position.
And, you know, as quickly as things change, change as the site matures. You know, to answer the questions earlier, as soon as we can deliver some meaningful statements and progress, that then will be reflected in a revised MTFP, you know, on that same level of certainty, as opposed to kind of pie in the sky assumptions that allow us to sleepwalk into a potential problem, but kind of saying, let's strip it all back, let's really just deal with the known facts as we've got it, and then, you know, everything else should just be ups on it.
Carolyn.
Oh, I've forgotten. No, I haven't really. When you made your statement, John, right at the beginning of the meeting, and you referred to solvency or insolvency this term that's been appearing in the press, and there was a question at council in which it was mentioned as well. If we were looking for assurance, if the public was looking for assurance against insolvency, would you find it in table 1?
So a good question.
Can I just
What was the question? Sorry, it's really hard. Those down the other end of the page, it's really hard to hear. Apologies.
We were talking, Joe, right at the
I can
beginning.
hear John and David fine.
Yeah.
Oh,
Shall I try
say
and
it,
repeat
John.
the question?
Just about
You
that.
got it fine, John, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah.
correct me if I get this wrong.
No.
I think what we are searching for, there are assertions that STDC are insolvent, and that in some way the 100 million is going to go into STDC, taking a prop up its finances, is the sort of backdrop to it. And I think what the board are searching for, the specific question was, does the board take comfort from table 1?
Yeah.
Where would it find its own evidence to counter any spurious assertions that somehow STDC is insolvent? I think was the question. Is that?
Yeah,
Is that
that's passable. Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
Go on, Joe. Go on, Joe.
So in terms of the budget setting, you'll see from the MTFP that there is a balanced budget for the next few years, so not just for next year, and you're only approving next year's budget. You're not technically approving the budget, you're noting or approving the MTFP, but noting that they are estimates for future years. But at the moment, you have a balanced budget set for the next few years, and you have sufficient reserves at the end of this year to manage you over the next few years. So in terms of right now, in the next 12 months, STDC, as you can see from that table, is not insolvent, but that can have different meaning for different people. We're not. I think that the really important thing to say is we're not a limited company, and that's the point I'm making, is that insolvency from a limited company perspective has a different connotation to perhaps the general question that you're asking. So we wouldn't be subject to the Insolvency Act or anything like that.
Any other questions?
Just around the loan agreements and the payment holiday that we did need from the TVCA. How many years are we coming to agreements on the size of them interest repayments over, say, the next 3 years or 5 years? Is that a variable? Is it something the TVCA could maybe call in and put the percentage up if the government funding next year didn't come through or something, or there was a variance? I just want, is that a potential risk, or is that going to be penciled in with the loan agreements now for the next 5 to 10 years to give us a level of certainty?
Yeah, absolutely. So so the principal repayments are obviously separate to your ability to service your debt during the course of the year in the revenue budget. They're outside of that. We are now I guess with 2 hats, and I'm doing both the TVCA and STDC, but I'm working with Victoria and others on the terms of those agreements. We're proposing to take a report to TVCA Cabinet in June. We're doing an update on those loan agreements to TVCA Cabinet in April. We're proposing to work, obviously, with John and others on refining those terms, and that will be reprofiled.
Is it worth just noting, Joe, sorry, and Becky, to those in the room, just that the interest payable is in our MTFP and budget.
Yeah,
So
I appreciate that.
full interest.
I'm just wondering if it could be a varying over the next couple of years as the TVCA or funding streams are not. There's a couple where we've got shortfalls on and things like that. I'm just wondering, is that a potential risk to the STDC in terms of them trying to... I haven't seen these loan agreements, so I don't know what you've agreed and what you haven't agreed.
The loan agreements are still being drafted.
Right, okay.
Sorry, Joe, go on.
Yeah, after that, so loan agreements still in draft, and that's what we're working through to bring back final loan agreements to TDC Cabinet in June, and also the STDC board to agree those loan T's and C's. One of the things I need to do to be able to put forward proposals is to do some sort of medium-term cash flow forecasting. There's been a few things we've been working through in terms of the year-end accounts and adjustments and different bits and bobs. And so we've now commissioned people, or in the process of commissioning PwC, to support with the cash flow modelling for the next few years, because as you know, cash is very different from accruals accounting. Once we've done that piece of work, we'll conclude it as a priority. Then we'll be quite certain then about the principal repayments that are affordable by STDC. And obviously we'll make sure that the T's and C's of the loan agreements are affordable. Everyone is aware that these are long-term regeneration schemes. There was always going to be potential issues with cash flowing in the early years. That's not a surprise to everybody. That's part of the business case that went forward. And therefore it's just us making sure that we make those principal repayments affordable to STDC.
And with that final loan agreements then need sign off by the board in terms of?
Yes.
Yeah. So well, that'll come back to the next board meeting then, and we said, or the meeting after that.
We're going to take, I haven't spoken to John and David about this, but and Vic, but we're planning to take, just decided we're planning to take it to TDC Cabinet in June, just to give us time for the cash flow modelling to be concluded.
So yeah,
originally we were aiming for April, but we'll see back to June.
We'd love to dovetail that in as soon as we could.
So one of the reasons I asked the question, John, is because when Joe goes, we're taking on your own FD, aren't you? Or separate from the TVCA as part of the recommendations of the Ridgewell review. So I'm just hoping that we get everything sort of cast an eye, and could be a variant sort of next year, and a surprise for us when it comes to budget setting again, that the TVCA want an extra, I don't know, speaking as well, an extra 3.4% or something.
Any other questions?
Just in terms of that cash flow, I mean obviously STDC's ability to service the level of debt that it's currently carrying is going to be predicated on the business rates income coming in, and there's a lot of risk and uncertainty, accepting that obviously there's a prudent forecast. To what extent has there been a discussion with TVCA about, as part of the contractual negotiations in terms of the loan agreements, what flexibilities might be available to STDC if the cash flow forecast demonstrates that STDC's ability to service the debt over the next 2 years is going to be compromised? Is there going to be flexibility built into those loan agreements to deal with that issue should it arise, or that eventuality? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand that. I think, Joe, that's probably what you were trying to say in the earlier statement, wasn't it, in terms of, you know, some of the reasons why we've not signed and brought loan agreements to STDC, and obviously prior to that TVCA, is we want to make sure that the terms, the payment terms within those loan agreements are exactly that.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a lot of, we've got 6 items to approve under recommendations and 2 to note, which is at the very beginning of the report. Can I take it that you approve the items that you are being requested to approve? Thank you. Yep. And note the 2 items that have been requested to note. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 9, the Treasury Management Strategy.
Yeah, I will do a brief intro on this one because it's quite a technical document. So the Treasury Management Strategy, we're actually just clarifying with SIPFA that this is required for a development corporation. But that aside, obviously given the level of borrowing and the matters we've been discussing, it's probably sound anyway, good practice to have a Treasury Management Strategy. But it is part of our legal requirement to present and for you to approve that. The Treasury Management Strategy, it sets out basically the management of cash flows, which is what we've been talking about. But it includes the capital plans, so you'll see within the Treasury Management Strategy, it's the capital plan, capital programme over the next few years, and more importantly, the elements of that programme are to be funded by borrowing. Because obviously the Treasury Management Strategy also looks at the corporation's borrowing and the affordability of that. We really need to read both the budget reports, the capital strategy and the Treasury Management Strategy together. They do read across, but it's really important, one of the most important things is that capital plans are affordable, particularly when they have borrowing involved. The Treasury Management Strategy also looks at the investment of surplus cash. We know through the mid-year review there was some further work to do on the management of STDC cash, including setting up overnight facilities for investing of surplus cash, and that's something that we've taken forward to be in place for 1st of April for the new financial year. Within the strategy, you'll see the capital financing requirement. That technical term is basically the capital expenditure both in the budget that's been set or we're proposing for 26-27 and prior year capital expenditure that needs to be funded by borrowing. So it's capital investment that's deemed to be required borrowing. And with that, you also have to have an authorised limit and an operational boundary, and that's a maximum level of borrowing that you as a board approve and delegate down to officers to operate within. The authorised limit is going to be the CFR plus, based on Treasury advice via the shared service agreement with TBCA, there's a £5 million buffer in there, so there's a bit of headroom between the authorised limit and the operational boundary, and the operational boundary is the CFR. In reality, one would hope that you're not borrowing up to your CFR because you have some balance sheet resources that you're going to use, which is deemed internal borrowing, and therefore the CFR should be the maximum you'll ever need to borrow. Occasionally you can just go above it from a cash flow perspective, but as long as you're coming back down below the end of the year, then that's fine. But the board must formally approve both the authorised limit and the operational boundary, please.
Any questions?
I think the larger number of business rates have already been sort of covered, haven't they?
Is the board happy to approve the Treasury Management Strategy for 26?
Can I just come back to that point, because it goes back to the question Alex asked earlier, actually, about what do officers, if there's any things that's coming through, and maybe what Joe to correct on this, but I think what I've just heard is that we are, by agreeing this, we allow capital up to 5 million, was it, to be agreed by officers, or it has to, or within the total annual budget of capital, that can be just agreed by officers up to the maximum. Anything over that would have to come back to here. So therefore, if there's a big capital item that comes that is within the financial plan, then it can just be agreed. It wouldn't have to be agreed subsequently to this board into the specifics of the capital investment. I think that's what I've just heard is officers have delegation once we agree the macro budget to agree capital works, and the capital work wouldn't have to come through this board up to the total value, which I think Alex was asking earlier, is actually do capital projects then come through here rather than just for note, or are they agreed? I think that's where I've just that conversation there.
So
that makes sense.
Probably a question that I'll ask for Joe to help clarify Jason's statement. Are we getting confused possibly between the Treasury Management Strategy and the capital work programme contained within the MTFP?
I think it could be in terms of what's agreed for the total annual budget, and therefore any capital works up to the value of the maximum funding is basically what I think we're agreeing to is through the management of funds is devolved to officers to make that decision of, as long as they don't go over the total amount allocated. So if there's a £20 million project, for example, that can just be agreed irrelevant of what it is on the site, is my understanding. That's what we're agreeing with the board, up to the maximum finance budget for the capital works. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, that's right. So when you're approving the capital programme, that is your overall framework within which officers have to operate. And within that, you've got specific individual projects or programmes within that. And so those total budgets that you're approving for each of those, I think one in there was park and ride, and you've got site recreation, you are agreeing that at a total project level as well as an overall programme level, and then we only have delegated authority to operate within that approval.
Okay, but yes, thank you.
But the important thing is, from that capital programme, underneath it is a table which shows the funding, and of that funding, you'll see that predominantly that's TVCA borrowing,
Yeah.
and that's what is then factored in to the CFR in the Treasury Management Strategy.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
I think I understand what you're saying. You're asking, can we run off, basically, and, you know, without board approval, move the actual borrowing up to the authorised limit without anything coming back? And what we're saying is, we put the MTFP together as a capital strategy, a capital position within that MTFP, and as Joe rightly says, well, that's what we're approving. Any variations to that will be brought back.
So to be clear, we couldn't say drop demolition out of there and bring something else in for the delegation of officers. That would need to come back to the board.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, can I just come in, please, Chair?
Sure.
For the avoidance of doubt, officers cannot overturn any decisions made by elected members and boards. So officers cannot. Sorry, councillor. Oh, you're looking at the screen.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, if cabinet or if the STDC board make a decision, officers cannot overturn that. We're here to advise. Officers are here to advise. And it's you as the elected members who and the appointed members who make the decisions, and we implement those decisions.
I appreciate that.
To overturn.
I appreciate that, but as Jason alluded to in the past, that hasn't always been the case for the political vehicle. Without getting political, there has been decisions that we probably wouldn't have rubber stamped as a board, and that has gone through officers' allegation with one particular elected member rather than the board. Again, not getting political, so that's why we're trying to double down on that. I'm not making assertions that you officers just run off and do whatever you please. That's not what I was saying at all. Even though in Redcar Council, I think some of them do.
I was just thinking that.
I know, Cameron, I was. But yeah, please don't take any. I wasn't pointing fingers at officers. We're just the optics of this board.
No, I'm setting out the facts. So
Okay. Yeah, so am I.
It's elected members and the elected mayor and the boards and the cabinet and so on, committees that make the decisions. The officers give advice, that's the role, and the officers have to implement the decisions that are made. So, you know, I just for the avoidance of doubt, I will make it absolutely clear that any decisions made at boards or by cabinet, by elected members or appointed members, will not be overridden by officers. Officers will give advice, unless those decisions are illegal, but then those decisions...
You just want to start all those conversations, don't you?
Because those decisions, illegal decisions, wouldn't be allowed to be made, which is why you have the Section 73 officer here, you have me here, you have Vic here, and all of the other officers. So, you know, we make sure you don't make illegal decisions, but we would never override decisions. We would only ever give advice, and we would implement the decisions that boards and committees make.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Can I ask him?
Sorry, I'll in there. Sorry, Chair. I do apologise, but what I should have probably done at the beginning of the meeting is introduce the monitoring officer, Jeanette. Sorry, Jeanette, I do apologise.
Yeah, we are now. Would we know who is this lady? Welcome.
Okay, any other questions? No? Can I take it then that we approve the Treasury Management Strategy for 26-27?
Yeah.
Okay, just before we do that, is there any, and again I'm going to draw back to the question of public funding in the strategy, is there anywhere any risks involved where we see we might have to revert back to public funding or lending?
So at the moment, the borrowing that is required for the capital programme, both past and present, is included within the Treasury Management Strategy, and the knock-on impact on borrowing costs is included within the MTFP.
Yeah.
again, without mentioning particular tenants though, if something was to go remiss with any of the current tenants, does the strategy take that into account?
It's back to sort of the original question, that the main source of funding to pay for the interest is the business rates income.
Okay.
Agree? Agree?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to information governance report. Victoria, this is you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a standard, one of our standing reports. It's an update on STDC's position in relation to freedom of information requests, complaints and data protection matters. I will take the report as read. Hopefully it's quite self-explanatory, but I am happy to take any questions.
Have we had any FOIs on the 100 million? I know I'm assuming we would have, or I'm hoping we would have.
None have reached my desk
Really?
as yet, but I am not the information governance team, so I would have to ask them if there's been an update as yet.
Okay.
Any other questions for Victoria? No? We note that report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to delegated and urgent decisions again. I think this is you.
It is, yes, thank you, Chair. Again, one of our standing reports. It's quite a quick one, and in the period mentioned in the report, there's been no urgent or delegate decisions taken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 12, if there's no questions on that report, we can move straight to close the meeting, but if anybody's got questions, then we'll need to exclude it. Has anybody got questions on agenda item 12?
No.
No?
No.
In that case, thank you all very much. Our date and time of the next meeting is the 11th of June at 11 o'clock. I'm assuming that may change a little bit because of this report might have been made. We'll keep some flexibility around that, but that's what's in the diary at the moment. Okay, great. Thank you all very much for your time.